This episode is brought to you by HP. Whenever you do your best thinking, the HP Spectre X360 is ready when inspiration strikes. With power save for battery life and focus mode to multitask, you can do your best thinking whenever and wherever it happens. The HP Spectre X360 2-in-1 convertible PC with Windows 10 saves battery life for whenever an idea hits you. HP Spectre X360, a more thoughtful laptop.
Hey, Brian Kane, the host of the Mental Performance Mastery podcast series here with you. And thanks for checking out this Golf Mental Performance Mastery podcast with Kane and Karp, or what we're going to refer to as Golf MPM. Now, this is a podcast I've recorded with University of Denver men's golf coach Trey Carpenter, where we talk specifically about golf mental performance, swing management, course management, and most importantly, self-management. Now, you're going to hear us in the first 7 episodes refer to this podcast as Breakfast Balls. That was the name of it before I had a moment and said, you know what, we should actually just call this podcast what it is, Golf Mental Performance Mastery. So if you hear us referring to Breakfast Balls, we now call it Golf Mental Performance Mastery. Glad that you are going to listen. And if you ever want to join the show live, just send me an email, brian@briankane.com, and we can get you on the show. Or if you go to the No Filter Network, so check out No Filter Network and then click on hosts, click on Brian Kane, and you can get yourself a ticket to come on, ask questions. We'd love to have you. Thanks for checking out the Golf Mental Performance Mastery podcast with Kane and Karp. Take it one shot at a time, and let's dominate the day. Hey, what's happening? Brian Kane here with the Breakfast Balls podcast, feeding the one-shot warrior. Soon to be joined by Denver University head men's golf coach Trey Carpenter. He was an assistant at Stanford University. He was an assistant at Marquette University. And he's going to join us here today, as he does every week, on the Breakfast Balls podcast, where when we talk about feeding the one-shot warrior, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to develop mental toughness on the golf course. And I think when we're looking at developing mental toughness on the golf course, what we're looking to try to do is help you to go one shot at a time and give you the best chance for success. And when we're looking at going one shot at a time and give you the best chance for success, I believe there's 10 fundamental skills that you want to develop to create mental toughness. And those 10 fundamental skills are, number 1, an elite mindset. Number 2, motivation and commitment. Number 3, focus and awareness. Number 4, self-control and discipline. Number 5, process over outcome. Number 6, meditation and mental imagery. Number 7, routines and habits of excellence. Number 8, time management and organization. Number 9, leadership. And number 10, the right culture. And what we want to do is we want to go in and create those 10 skills by doing drills to help us to develop those skills. So here's what I want you to think if you're taking notes here. And maybe you're listening to this drive and maybe you're watching the replay. But basically what you want to think is, if I do drills that helps me develop skills, and a collection of skills is a skill set. So what we're going to talk about here in this journey with the Breakfast Balls podcast is we're going to talk about how is it that you can develop these 10 skills that make up mental toughness on the golf course, and what are the drills that you can do? Well, as we know, as a golfer, your focus determines your future, and you've got to be able to focus one shot at a time. And if you're going to focus one shot at a time, we have to develop the skill of focus. So what's a drill I can do to do that? The first thing is, let's have you go to briankane.com/cgrid and start working on concentration grids. Concentration grids is an exercise that's been around for a long time. And it's an exercise where, let's see here. Let me go screen share screen, my entire screen. Perfect. So it's an exercise where basically you're going to be able to, it looks like we've got Trey Carpenter here in the audience. Trey, I need you to hit the knock button and we'll bring you in. And if you're new here to No Filter, what I want you to do is participate in the chat. And if you want to join us, you can go ahead and hit the knock button and we can bring you in. So I'm going to again share my screen here as Coach Carpenter is joining us. And when I share my screen, I want to show you how you can use concentration grids to develop better focus on the golf course. So you're going to go to briankane.com/cgrid. And let's start, let's say, by taking a 5. Oops, we don't want to do a 5x3, but you could. So 5x3. Okay, what I do with the concentration grid is I click on the numbers in succession. So 0, 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Boom. 13 seconds, 0.86. So from the time I start my pre-shot routine until I let go of the shot, right? So in golf, the golf shot's not just me hitting the ball over the ball. It's going to be from the time the shot starts, which is when I start to get my yardage and go through that process again, until, let's say, I put the club back in the bag. So let's say that process is going to be about 30 seconds. Let's create and find a concentration grid that's going to be about 30 seconds to complete. So let's say a 6x6. I hit concentrate. Gives me a 6x6 grid. And let's rock and roll and see how long this takes. So it's going to be 40 seconds, which would be, maybe a 6x6 is a little bit too big, but maybe go 5x5. But that's about the length of the time I need to enter my think box, make my decision, go through, get my deep breath as part of the pre-shot routine, have my target, see the image in the shot shape, get the feel for it, and then go up, pull the trigger, and then release the shot. So when I've worked with golfers, I'll take one pro golfer I work with who lives in England and was basically shut down during the pandemic. He said, Canner, how can I work on my focus? I can't go to the course. It's closed. I said, well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to create a grid. I think he did a 6x6 actually, about 40 seconds. And you're going to go through and you can do that 65 times. You can take about a minute break between, and you can do 65 of these. So you get used to flipping the switch on, flipping the switch off, letting your mind go, do whatever you got to do for that next minute or more. Come back in, flip the switch on, flip the switch off. I said, you're going to basically take a scorecard and you're going to go through and you're going to get a birdie on every single hole. So you're going to go through, if it's a par 5, you're going to do 4 in a row and then take a little bit bigger break. If it's par 3, you're going to do 2 in a row, take a little bit bigger break. And that's how we went through to develop that one shot warrior focus. And that's what we're doing here on the Breakfast Balls podcast. Coach Drake Carpenter, we're already given one skill here, one drill, concentration gains people can do to develop the skill of focus and awareness. Thanks for joining us on Breakfast Balls, Coach. What's happening?
Usual. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
Getting geared up for our next event this weekend, heading to San Diego. So trying to get the guys dialed in and mindset all in the right place and go get ready to get after it.
Good. Now, when you're talking about mindset in the right place, let's unpack that a little bit. What do you mean by mindset in the right place? What's that mean for you and your team at Denver?
Yeah, I think for us, one of the challenges we've been working through since I've been here is kind of what are we focusing on when we get to a tournament? Like if we're out there after a practice round trying to figure out what my golf swing is, like it's too late, like the time we get on the bus to go to the airport to the time we get back, like it has to be all in on routines. What's my target? What's my focus? Not, oh, my golf swing feels this way today, or I'm going to see how my warm up goes. And then I'll decide what I'm going to hit on the third tee. That kind of stuff we have to get our minds around and have a plan before we get there, because if we get there and we don't have it, it's too late.
And how does that mindset get developed? I mean, is that something that you think golfers have inherently? Some do, some don't, or is it something that they get coached on? I mean, do you literally coach them on taking that mindset?
I think it's unique to everyone depending on, how they've played golf growing up. Did their parents teach them? Did they have a swing instructor? What their high school coach do? It's different for everyone. And I think that's part of the challenge is getting everyone on the same page. Like what is our team culture when it comes to that? Cause I've got 10 different personalities and 10 different ways of playing golf and growing up that, we have to find some common ground on a lot of things when it comes to competition. And, so for us, it's, working with you, it's the spaced repetition, I think week to week of what are we focusing on? How are we going to take these events and turn them into positives for us? And what are we going to, waste energy on stuff that we can control, not stuff that we can't control, so being prepared for the weather, knowing what clubs we're hitting off, what tees, or at least what our target is off the tee. And, if the wind changes, what are we doing? All that stuff that we talk about every time we go. And it doesn't happen overnight. We're not going to show up to San Diego and suddenly be a team with perfect culture and perfect mindset and all that stuff. It's a constant progress, moving forward that we're working on, at least weekly, if not every day.
I speak about working on something weekly and on a daily basis. It was interesting watching the final round of the PGA Tour this weekend, and Colin Morikawa, who led going into Sunday and who ended up closing it out and winning the event. One of the things that was mentioned, before, like before the tournament started that day, was how he's worked with a sports psychologist every week since he was basically, I think, 8 years old until he was a senior in high school. And what kind of edge does that give to a player, you think, when they've had that much mental training? Now, I also think the guy he's worked with is also his swing coach, now that I've kind of looked into it and done a little bit deeper dive. But what kind of difference does that make when you have a swing coach, or you have a college head coach, or you're working with someone on mental performance from the time you're in eighth grade until you're a senior in high school, or your time you're 8 years old until you're a senior in high school?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just having a process and knowing what your routines are and what your system is. Like, you're going to have to do that at some point in your career. The sooner you start it, the better, right? Like, if you wait until you're on the PGA Tour to have a PGA Tour player's mindset and schedule and routines and habits of excellence, it's like, you might figure it out, you might not. But if you can do that in high school, when you get to college, nothing, the players around you change, the golf courses change, really changes while you level up. So I think for him, he's got an advantage if that's all he knows and can focus on that. And I think the sports psychology realm of golf is historically kind of been one of these things that I go talk to somebody when things aren't working well, versus like, this is something I do all the time and it's part of my process. I mean, guys see their swing coaches all the time, routinely. The guys on the PGA Tour aren't going to see their swing coach when something's off, and that's it. They're seeing them all the time, even if, they're not making swing overhauls every week. It's usually just, it's basic stuff. How's my alignment? How's my setup? In Morikawa's case, they may talk some mental game depending on who it is. But, for us, it's kind of the same stuff with you. It's not like we're reinventing the wheel week to week. It's just constantly reinforcing those things that it's kind of second nature for, humans to get away from. It's easy to get negative on yourself and hold on to bad shots. And it's just something that you constantly have to work on. And I think the sooner you start that, the better, because it's a must have if you want to get to the highest level.
Well, it's like sharpening the saw, right? And Stephen Covey talks about this in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's, a friend of mine, Jason Kuhn, who's a former Navy SEAL, now mental performance coach, leadership trainer. One of the things he talks a lot about is, relentless fundamental execution under extreme stress. And he says that's when I asked him, he was a college baseball player. I said, Jason, what was the thing you learned going through BUDS and being a SEAL and being in combat and the whole process of special operations and that whole life of yours? What would you go back and tell yourself as a college athlete? And he said, I'd summarize it in 6 words. If you want to be good, it comes down to relentless fundamental execution under extreme stress. You can check out Jason Kuhn online. Google Jason Kuhn. Check out Stonewall Solutions, which is his company, does great team building, leadership, mental performance training. But Drake, how does that mindset, you think, fit within golf too, of relentless fundamental execution under extreme stress?
Yeah, we always talk about, you're going to revert to your level, sink to your level of training. You're not going to rise to the occasion. So for me and the guy, we even had a point this year where, we're playing our home course often and it's pretty wide off the tee. And the guys are like, we go to tournaments and the golf courses are more demanding. We need to prepare better. And, that's on me as a coach. And so, we went somewhere this weekend where it's tree lined and these guys are hitting blind shots on golf courses they've never played before. And I think that's the best kind of training we can get, on days like that. I'm not worried about what score you shoot. I'm out there watching the guys play and I'm trying to see who's worried about hitting their target more so than avoiding the danger that could or could not be out there because you can't see it. Like, that's the kind of stuff that translates to a tournament. And the more we can do that kind of stuff in practice, the better off we are. So I actually kind of I got on Google Maps the other day and I laid out our home course, and we made some like in course out of bounds and made all the bunkers hazards and just made some more penal areas out there. So the guys have to think versus, just stepping on the tee and kind of going through the motions because they've been around that course 100 times. So, I think like you talked about, that's how do I constantly give them something different so that they're uncomfortable or they have to think about what they're doing more, because that's going to better prepare us when we're seeing new things on the road.
Yeah, I love how you're able to modify the training stimulus in the sense of, hey, we're looking at a course and this is the course we have, or this is the range we have, but we're going to go out there and we're going to treat a sand trap like it's a hazard and you got to take a drop or whatever it is. And you're able to modify the course to make it more challenging. It's no different than a baseball coach who says, okay, if there's a ground ball in the infield, the fastest runner in college baseball is going to get down the line, let's say 4.1. Average runner is going to be 4.5. So we're going to play this scrimmage at 4.0. So let's say, you got Trey Carpenter, who it's a ground ball to shortstop. He's going to get to first base in 5 seconds, but they field the ball. They throw it over there. It gets there in 4.2. So they get you out by like 2 steps, but you're safe because it wasn't under 4.0. So what that does is that causes the defense to play fast, causes them to make mistakes, causes them to learn to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's a great way to mod coaches that are listening to this. And I heard, I think I'm reading a book right now called Mind Over Golf, right? I basically went to Amazon and bought every book in the mental game of golf category, and I just starting to rip through them. And Mind Over Golf, I think the guy's name is Richard Coop from University of North Carolina, professor. And one of the things I can't remember who the golfer was. I want to say it was Payne Stewart. And he said that Payne Stewart used to go out and he would lay down towels on the range at different distances. And he would basically work his wedge game trying to land the ball on a towel at 20 yards, 25 yards, 30 yards, 40 yards. And he had very specific small targets so that he wasn't just hitting into a flag all the time, because we don't do that all the time. Or he wasn't just hitting into open space. He was like, okay, there's my target. That's a towel. That's what I'm trying to go to. So I think any way we can modify the training stimulus to make it more challenging and more game-like, I think is going to be important. Speaking about being more game-like, one of the things that you've talked a lot about and you've introduced me to is the concept of course management. And I think when we're looking at building the one-shot warrior, feeding the one-shot warrior on the Breakfast Balls podcast, we really look at 3 aspects of it: swing management, course management, self-management. And I like to focus on the self-management. And as a head coach, you focus on the course management and the swing management piece. You also do some self-management. But I think that when we look at course management, the one thing that you've turned me on to I like a lot is Decade with Scott Fawcett. And recently, you and I were talking, and Scott had a quote that you brought us in the mental game of the discipline, from the players on the PGA Tour to the players on the Korn Ferry Tour. And he talked about like experiences in other sports, physical versus mental edge in the kind of the average and elite performers. But would you unpack that for us a little bit, Coach Karp, about Scott Fawcett's quote about the difference between the PGA and the Korn Ferry Tour?
Yeah, so Scott responded to a topic that someone asked, what specifically separates players on each tour. And Scott's answer was patience and discipline, and how those 2 factors impact their course management and decision-making, ultimately leading to their internal conversation and emotional control, which is interesting coming from a guy who's, teaching analytics and data. But I don't think those 3 pillars operate in silos. I think, they're not mutually exclusive. They all they feed off each other a little bit, right? So like if I'm out there and I'm picking a target that is correct based on the data, that should free me up to have a better mental game, right? Like if I know that that's the best shot for that scenario, like I can accept the outcomes because I know I'm aiming at the right target, right? So like that if I'm post round trying to analyze, what went wrong out there, I know my target was right? So like I can kind of eliminate the course management part. And now I'm like self-management, or did I just make a physical error, right? Like we all make bad swings, and sometimes it's going to end up in a bunker, whether you had the right target or not. But was that based on a physical error, or was it something in my routine? Did I have, a thought that came in and I didn't back off of it and I went ahead and pulled the trigger, right? So I think, you talk about course management, self-management, swing management, they all feed off of each other. And if you're not thinking about all three, I think it's hard to operate with just two, right? So, for us, I'm trying to get the guys more freed up and more focused on their specific targets, which Decade will give you, versus worrying about where do I want to miss this one or where do I not want to miss this shot? Because then that brings in swing errors and physical errors when you're guessing targets or you're not comfortable with what you're doing. So I think all those three kind of tie into each other a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree completely. And I think the one that most golfers resort to is swing management. And I heard the line, can't remember where I picked it up, but I thought it was so relevant as they said, hey, let's go out and play golf instead of going out to play golf swing. And when they're out there on the golf course, the baseball players do the same thing. Hitters do the same thing. They're always focused on my swing. My swing doesn't feel right. My swing's off. And I had a player last night, one of the top high school freshmen in college baseball. And they're 7 games in. First time he's really struggling. And, every kid that goes to Division I college athletics out of high school is good. They've never really failed. They wouldn't be going to Division I. But when they go to Division I, now it gets really hard, especially when you're looking in the Power 5 conferences, right? So he's a Power 5 conference kid, a lot of expectations. He's struggling for the first time. I'm like, well, what have you been doing? How you handling it? He's like, man, I go back and watch film after every game. And he's like, and I went back to the fall when I was playing really good, and I looked at my swing, and he goes, my swing looks virtually the same. I said, then stop playing swing. I said, what's the underlying issue? The underlying issue is here. You've never had to play a baseball game where you were looking over your shoulder going, shit, if I don't get a hit here, I'm going to get taken out. And guess what? What that's going to do, if you have any of that creeping in there going, I have to get a result here because I'm auditioning for playing time or I'm playing in this qualifier, literally trying to go out and earn a spot in the tournament this weekend, that's not going to help your golf game. That's not going to help you hit. That's going to be real and that's going to exist, but you compartmentalize, put it over into the present moment in the process of what you're doing in that present moment. Easier said than done. But it becomes a lot easier when the golfer practices his process. And that's one thing I don't think they do. They practice the swing, but I don't think they practice course management. I don't think they practice self-management. Is there anything that you do, Coach, to help your golfers practice course management?
Yeah, so something I've been doing kind of since I started getting into coaching and was familiar with Decade is I get on Google Maps basically and kind of overlay an overhead view of what a shotgun pattern would be on a tee shot. And that gives guys kind of a 2-dimensional view of when I'm standing on that tee, maybe there's a bunker that's 400 yards away, but on the overhead bird's eye view, I can tell that that's the center of my shotgun pattern, right? So it gives them a specific target off that tee on a golf course that they maybe have never seen before, right? So like there's so much, what you can do with Google Maps and yardage books and Decade and all this stuff. You can have a practice round without physically playing a practice round anymore, or get pretty darn close, especially if a course is fairly flat. There's not a lot of elevation change. You know what the center of the shotgun pattern is, how wide that is for each player. And you can kind of plug and play that thing on any tee shot and figure out, am I hitting driver here? Am I hitting it to 300 yards? Am I hitting it to 250 yards? What's the play here? Before ever actually really seeing the hole. And there's some outliers. You'll stand on a tee and maybe it doesn't match up, the elevation change or, you can't really tell how thick trees are sometimes or what's, under there. Is it a hazard? Is it out of bounds? Is it going to run into the desert? Stuff like that. But, for the most part, we could do so much preparation ahead of time, use that to visualize tee shots, and we can play rounds mentally before we show up. And the practice round doesn't feel like our first view, right? So I think doing stuff like that is far in advance as we can and trying to get guys as familiar as possible with the place, or at least thinking about it before we show up on the first tee, so that when we get to the practice round, we're not trying to figure stuff out. We're not getting out there hitting it. It's not a practice round. It's a preparation round. Like we should be confirming what clubs I'm hitting off tees based on the yardage book, what we saw on Google Maps, stuff like that. I like to call them preparation rounds more than practice rounds. Practice is what we did before we got here. Now it's time to compete, right? So, we get out there and I like to have guys, let's hit one ball, we're not sitting here practicing shots over and over. All we're doing is reinforcing, bad behavior and bad thoughts at that point, So, we can do so much, I think, on the front end now with golf, with all the data and the yardage books and how good that stuff is these days.
It's like the difference between I'm going to the driving range versus I'm going to the practice area. I'm going to the training area, And I think so many times athletes have such a negative connotation around practice, which is a whole nother conversation, but looking at it as training, I'm going to the training area. I'm going to train my golf today. I'm going to develop my golf skill today. And I go into training with a very specific plan instead of going out there and I go out there and I see too many golfers that do this. They go out and they start hitting clubs and they're like, okay, this one's not working. Let me work on this. And it's like, no, man, before you show up at the practice area, have a practice plan. It's like if you're a teacher and you walk in to teach a class and you got no lesson plan, or you're a coach and you show up to practice and go, well, let's figure out what we're going to work on today. You're losing. So you've got
to plan
before you show up.
Yeah. And specifically, we'll get guys on par threes, and this happens everywhere in a practice round where they just want to try every club and figure out which one works on that hole. And I'm like, well, the wind's going to be totally different tomorrow, or the temperature is going to be totally different tomorrow. Let's use some time figuring out what might happen during the heat of battle and how we will handle that versus figuring out what's the best club for this practice round shot today. That doesn't help us. Right. And so, I think, and that's the same stuff we do with yardage books. Guys don't want to sit down and look through a yardage book and see what's out there and come up with a game plan. And then they want to stand on a tee and hit driver, 3-wood and 2-iron and hopefully figure out which one works that day. Well, what happens when it's 20 degrees colder and it's into the wind tomorrow and it's raining? If that person gets up on a tee and they're lost because I hit 2-iron in the practice round yesterday. What do I hit? Okay, 2-iron again when it's driver, right? And it doesn't seem like a big deal in the moment, but if that's 0.2 of a shot or 0.3 of a shot and we have 2 or 3 guys do it, we just gave a shot on the field for no reason, right? So stuff like that happens all the time when teams and players overlook preparation when it comes to golf.
Love that. Coach Karp, let's wrap up today. I'm going to try a screen share. Let's see if this works. I'm going to go screen share entire screen. Let's see if the audio comes through this time. So I'm sharing my screen. You should see it say lay one brick at a time. Do you see that?
No.
It's not. Okay, fantastic. Well, we're going to dig in and get this dialed in. Basically, was showing you a clip of Will Smith talking about how when he was a kid, him and his brother had his dad say, hey, I want you to go build this wall. You're going to build this wall. And Will and his brother looked at it and said, man, we can't build that wall. It's impossible. He said, you don't set out to build a wall. You set out to lay one brick and lay it as good as you can. And after you lay that brick, you lay the next one. You lay the next one. You lay the next one. And 3 years later, they had a wall built. It's still there. And that's golf, man. You don't go out to set to shoot a certain score. You don't go out there to go low. You don't go out there, to shoot a 54. You go out there to go one shot at a time and to treat every shot as if it's the most important one because it's the next one. And you go out there and you get immersed in your process. You get immersed in the present moment and you hit that shot to the best of your ability as you can on that shot. You accept all outcomes and you rinse and you repeat as long as it takes for you to finish the round. And when you do, you execute that and you look back, you're going to like the result. Coach Karp, Breakfast Balls Podcast, episode number 2. Thanks for being with us here. We're going to be off next week on the 10th. I'm going to be in Vegas getting some on the golf course myself, celebrating my wife's birthday, but we'll see you in 2 weeks, 14 days, or should I say 1 day, 14 times from now. Until then, Coach Karp, don't count the days. Make the days count. See you, buddy.
Hey, thanks for checking out this podcast. This is Brian Kane, and I would love for you to leave us a review if you've enjoyed the show. I'd also love to engage with you directly on social media, so please reach out on Instagram or Twitter at Brian Kane Peak. And then make sure you head over to briankane.com and check out some of our articles on our blog, some of our videos. And if you're a coach looking to master mental performance and up your game so you can help your clients get the results they've been looking for, check out my Mental Performance Mastery Coaches certification, where we teach you about the mindset, routines, and habits that your clients need to get the results they've been looking for. If you're an athlete or a performer listening to this podcast. Head over to briancane.com and click on athletes. Check out my 30 Days to Mental Performance Mastery for Athletes program, where I walk you through and coach you virtually to help you master the mental game and give yourself the best chance for success. Thanks for being with us here on the podcast. Let's dominate the day.
This Ironclad original is brought to you by Organifi. We could all use a little more energy in our day, but let's face it, caffeine can only do so much. When we start to look at the root causes of fatigue, it turns out that two of the main causes in low energy are chronic stress and lack of nutrition. That's where Organifi comes in. Organifi creates delicious superfood blends that address both of these problems. They use specific herbs and mushrooms to balance cortisol levels associated with stress, and they make it really easy to add more nutrients into your day. It's literally as simple as mixing a scoop into water or any plant-based milk. It's a convenient way to energize and nourish your day with carefully picked fruits, vegetables, medical mushrooms, and adaptogens. Adaptogens are herbs and mushrooms that literally help you adapt to the stress in your life by balancing hormones and promoting a state of calmness. Your body is an amazing organic machine. It turns food into energy, heals wounds, supports your consciousness, and so much more. But it needs the right fuel and signals to function at its best. Right now you can get 20% off. That's right, 20% off by visiting Organifi.com/mental performance. That's Organifi.com/mental performance.